Heatran and Jellicent, Jellicent and Heatran, Jellytran, HeatyCent, whatever you want to call them. They're a match made in heaven. They're a pair destined to be remembered among the stars. And I use them quite a lot. You know, Jellytran's HeatyCent is one of my favorite defensive duos. And, you know, I've been using them for a long time. I decided I was going to use them again in this battle with some random other things on the team. And we're playing OU because that's what they used him. So, without further ado, let's get on with the match. I'm going to lead off with Jellison, which I have no idea what this nickname is. I think I pulled a Steve and smashed my head against the keyboard, and that is what came of it. Either that or I just typed random letters which somehow formed a word. But first turn, he obviously has a Keldeo, which I can easily stay in on. There's nothing that really threatens me with. So I'm going to go for the Will-O-Wisp, try and get residual damage. Goes to Celebi, not Heatran. Dodges it, which is rather unfortunate. It doesn't make a big deal because, of course, Celebi has the natural cure. And then I decide to go into Tyranitar. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is dumb play number one. There are quite a few of these in this match, unfortunately, because as I have already made very clear, I have a Heatran on this team. So I could very easily go into that on a Celebi and take any kind of Leaf Storm or Giga Drain or whatever perfectly and then get up Stealth Rock as he switches. But no. I go into Tyranitar for some reason, one of the best nicknames ever, and dies without doing anything. I don't think I've even got to use that Tyranitar yet, which is really rather unfortunate. But it dies. Going to Heatran then, and he's obviously forced to switch out, goes into his Landorus. The fact that he took out T-Tar in one hit with Leaf Storm kind of leads me to believe that he specs, so I'm going to just roll with that assertion, and there you go. So, obviously, I can't stay in with Landorus T. He's going to get up his rocks, so we trade rocks for rocks one turn apart. But now I have Jellicent in, which is a perfect thing to go up against this thing because I can easily go for the Scald. I can try and burn it with Will-O-Wisp. There are myriad options for this Jellicent to go for. He's clearly going to U-turn, goes into Celebi, which is the best thing for him to deal with my Jellicent. And there's this constant tug-of-war that we're going to have between Celebi and Landorus and Heatran and Jellicent because they're both kind of... all four of them are kind of, you know, mismatched against one another because, you know, Jellicent can take on Landorus but not Celebi, and Celebi can take on the Jellicent but it can't take on Heatran. You know how it goes. So he's going to stay in and go for a Giga Drain. I'm not quite sure why I stayed in here either. Dumb play number two. But, you know, I got the Shadow Ball off on the Switch, which was a nice prediction. Don't really follow it up with another nice play because I stay in and recover. I guess partially what I was going for was I didn't want to switch in Heatran on an Earth Power and end up losing it. So I was partially playing the game of seeing how much he's going to predict early on and partially being dumb. But it's better to say that I was playing the game of being smart. But, you know, whatever. I'm not going to fully admit that. So I'm going to go with the again. And obviously now he's locked into Giga Drain, so this is going to do nothing to me. Keeping my Jellicent a decent-ish amount of health. It's obviously going to be worn down more by Stealth Rocks as the match goes on. So I've got to keep a lookout for that. I'll be wary of it. But we're back to Heatran for now. And it seems like a good opportunity to fire off a Lava Plume. You know, if Landorus comes back in, there's the potential I could burn that thing. And it doesn't have... I mean, it has good special defense, but not superb. So I could do... some decent damage to it. However, knowing that there is the potential for some kind of switch to actually Blissey or even Keldeo, I go into my Scizor, which I believe is Scarfed actually. So I'm thinking I'm going to be able to outspeed him, go for the U-turn and get out of here. You know, I was initially thinking Blissey was the main thing, which is why I went to Scizor, because obviously Superpower deals with that. But I thought Keldeo was fine and I could U-turn, but I discover here that he is in fact Scarfed, and he, you know, outspeeds me, goes to the Secret Sword and does a buttload of damage. Fortunately, though, I do have Scizor at an okay amount of HP, and especially being a Scarf set, it doesn't mind being too low because it can still kind of perform its functions at that amount of HP. Goes straight back into Jellicent, which I know Keldeo cannot deal with one-on-one. It gives me a perfect opportunity to recover, get my health back up to where it was. Or even try and throw out a Will-O-Wisp, but recovering the smart thing to do, honestly. I don't think I would have done anything else. Goes into Blissey, which, you know, ladies and gentlemen, when you have a match with a Heatran, a Jellicent, a Celebi, a Blissey, a Landorus T, you know it's going to be long. You already seen the length of this video. You know it's a long one. So we're in for the long haul here. And I guess we're going to have to do that. I didn't really speed this bit up, unfortunately, but, you know, whatever. It gives me a little bit of time to just bullshit about, say some words. and go back into because you got to have J and train references wherever they are necessary, and certainly they are, because it's Heat Tran, it's not Jan Tran. Oh, never mind. I don't know what I'm fucking saying. Regardless, I'm going to try and deal with this thing as best as I can. I don't know quite why I switched into Heatran. I think this is dumb play number 3. I was being much more conservative as opposed to offensive and trying to go back to Scizor because I certainly knew that things like Landorus and Celebi were around, so I couldn't lock myself into superpower because I wouldn't be able to take out Blissey when there are the defensive threats protecting it. So I'm going to stay in Lava Plume as he actually ends up pulling a double switch into Landorus. I get a nice crit there, no burn to follow it up, but that certainly helps a great deal. Landorus is bulky, it takes multiple hits to take down, so getting as much damage on it as possible is fantastic. Now I'm going to have to switch because I don't want to take an Earthquake. There's the potential of him U-turning as well, so in both scenarios I feel like Gengar can deal with it aptly, seeing as I resist the U-turn and it's unstabbed. And also Earthquake is obviously not going to do anything. He actually revenge crits me, which is slightly unfortunate, reduces Gengar's usability, but he goes into Keldeo thinking that he's going to be able to deal with me. However, ladies and gentlemen, he did not pay attention to the Sandstorm. If you are paying attention to the Sandstorm, you'll see that my Gengar goes first. It gets buffeted initially before Keldeo does, signaling that I am in fact faster, meaning that I am in fact scarfed, and I am packing the T-Bolt, which no one does these days. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, packs Gengar with sub and disable and all that stupid stuff. But I like Scarf Gengar because I'm a 4th gen player. That's where I was born and bred, and Scarf Gengar was a main threat, and no one really sees it coming. And it helped me out hugely there because Keldeo is a massive pain in the ass, and getting rid of it is fantastic. So, obviously, I'm not going to stay in on a Blissey when I'm locked into a T-Bolt. That's just kind of crazy talk. Silly string. You would literally be firing silly string all over the corridor if you thought that was a good idea, because you would be mentally insane. So I'm gonna end up going for the toxic here. I'm not quite sure what hidden power this Blissey's running, but it seems to like going for it for some reason. Also, it's carrying the S-Toss, which is fine. It's just I can't really stay in too long against this guy for fear of just losing all my HP because I only have 200 left at this point. I can only take 2 more of those. So I'm going to switch out with Heatran this turn, I believe. No, I'm not. I'm going to protect because I do, in fact, carry that. And when you're faced up against a Blissey that's toxic, generally a good idea. However, he thinks that staying in is not the best solution. So he's going to switch into Infernape. And I get the Protect off anyway. But I can then go for it secondarily because it failed, so there's no risk of me not getting it 100% on this turn. So I believe I do it again because the failure last time means that I already explained that. So I see him go for U-turn, and I think the logical conclusion to draw is that this is maybe a Life Orb Infernape, but there's also the chance it's banded. I do want to kind of find out by going to Jellicent, and if he turns out to be Life Orb, he's obviously going to switch up to Close Combat. If not, then he's potentially banded going for the U-turn, and depending on the amount of damage this does, I could kind of judge. Although, I don't know, Jellicent is pretty defensive and takes that well enough, so I'm not quite sure. There's no Life Orb recall, however, so I am thinking probably banded, and it works out when Celebi is Specs, Keldeo is Scarf, Infernape is banded. It seems like a Water, Fire, Grass core with the choice items dealt out between them, one might say. So that's what assumption I'm going under. I'm going to switch back into Gengar here because in multiple reasons, because potentially I'm still afraid of the Earth power on Celebi, so going into Heatran constantly on Celebi is not necessarily the best thing because there is that point at which he could just pull it out of the bag and ruin my plans. So going to Gengar serves a couple of purposes. Either I dodge the Earth power and I'm able to hit him with a Shadow Ball, or I die to a Giga Drain or a Leaf Storm, or maybe even somehow live one of those, but I'm not definitely going to when he is Specs. And it also allows me, after sacrificing Gengar, to go straight into Heatran because I know he's locked into the Grass move, and bada bing, bada boom, we're back in play. So I go for the Lava Plume on the switch. Nothing on his team is particularly pleased with taking Lava Plume. Despite Infernape resisting, it is an offensive Pokemon, so it's not going to be taking them that well. Plus, the fantastic thing about having Heatran versus Infernape is I have Protect, which means being that he's banded, I always am one step ahead of him. I know what he's going to lock himself into, and either he's going to have to stay in and go for that move, or I anticipate a switch. And clearly, he probably wants to stay in and go for a close combat. What he could have done here is predict me to go into Jellicent and pull the double switch into, I guess, I'm not quite sure. What does he have left to deal with Jellicent? Maybe Blissey could be a switch, but He doesn't, ends up going for close combat, allowing Jellicent to stay in here. He overpredicts there, thinking I would go back to Heatran, predicting him to switch, and I also predict him to switch, because who the hell stays in close combating a Jellicent? So we have a pointless turn. A completely pointless turn where he close combats and I Will-O-Wisp, and nothing is achieved. At this point, however, I'm thinking, he's definitely going to switch now. I should take advantage by recovering, because I'm only at half HP, and Jellicent is going to be kind of critical to this entire game, as it has been so far. Both Heatran and Jellicent are, what have I been telling you guys? They're the dynamic duo. They pull out fantastic situations for me, and I'm very glad for it. So obviously Blissey once again is a pain in my ass. I think there's probably some section here of bullshit going on that I may have to speed up, but we'll see how it goes for the moment. Go back into Heatran. It seems like the best thing to do, and he might hidden power again, but he actually makes a very nice play, probably knowing that I'm going to go back to Heatran, ends up pulling a switch to Landorus, which can threaten me heavily with the Earthquake, and I certainly don't want to be taking that. So I want to protect, I believe, to scout what he's thinking. He may perhaps U-turn as well, but that is obviously his thought process. I end up not protecting. I'm not quite sure why I do that. I probably should have done, because there's no reason for me not to. But he ends up just earthquaking, which is rather unfortunate, and is going to kind of spell the end of my Jellytran combo, because that does a huge amount of damage to Jellicent, and at this point, I don't have Gengar left. I don't really have anything that wants to take an Earthquake, so I'm going to have to let, unfortunately, my Jellicent die. It's done super well. It's a fantastic job that's been pulling off. An Earthquake is unfortunately going to seal the deal, but at this point, Heatran and Jellicent, the main reason I like having them around is because they stay alive for so long, and by staying alive for so long, they wear down your opponent's team to such a point that you can bring out something like a Keldeo, like a, Thunderous, or something like, something dangerous that is able to set up in one turn, or just even have a Scarf or something, and finish off the team by a clean sweep. So bring in Keldeo. This is an expert belt Keldeo, so it is well equipped to deal with everything on his team remaining. I'm faster than everything because I got rid of his own Scarf Keldeo, and I can just go ham. Infernape dies to the switch in with Stealth Rocks. He brings in Blissey, perhaps thinking that I am a choice Spectral Scarf set locked in. Does not realize that I'm expert belt. I switch it up to the Secret Sword, finish that thing off. He then has Dragonite. Unfortunately, because Heatran did get up Stealth Rocks earlier and he didn't have a spinner, Multiscale is broken, allowing me to go for the Icy Wind, and being at full power, able to get that expert belt boost, and finishes the Dragonite off. So it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, we should be able to clean this game up. Celebi is his final thing, or there's one more, I believe. I can't quite remember, but that thing has been worn down to such a point where Icy Wind will be able to finish it off from this range, and there must be one more thing. I can't quite remember. Kelio's done his job. It's the knight. It's the water knight in shining, icy, watery, sparkly armor. That's the thing. Landorus. Obviously, I'm faster than Landorus, and I'm able to go for a final Icy Wind and finish that guy off. And that's going to finish the game. So I really, very much a matter of attrition. A war of attrition, one might say. A war of Heatran and Jellicent. The dynamic duo, the pair, the match made in heaven, doing their fantastic work. And it turned out okay. I did make lots of dumb mistakes at the start. Obviously, losing T-Tar was absolutely horrific, horrendous, horrible. It was a bad play. And then I was just making some dumb mistakes. And I certainly could have cleaned that game up a lot earlier had I not been kind of, dilly-dallying around. But there you go. That's how games go sometimes. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I've not been uploading as much recently, but I've been preparing because I'm going back to university, and it's I'm probably not going to be able to make a huge amount of videos when I'm there, so I guess you're unfortunately going to have to get used to less videos, less content, because I just won't have the resources or time. But that's that. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, do feel free to leave a like. It's a long one. I'm just going to end it there. We're done. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.